we highly recommend checking out Mindful Moments.
Absolutely.
It's like a personal pocket philosopher, offering bite-sized insights from great thinkers delivered through the magic of AI narration.
It's a great resource.
It's perfect for those moments when you need a little mental nourishment on the go.
Okay, picture this. A literary giant, someone admired by figures like Gandhi and King.
Yeah, a real moral authority in many ways.
But at the same time, a man just riddled with contradictions. We're talking duels, intense struggles with desire. It's not fiction, it's Leo Tolstoy.
Absolutely. The mind behind War and Peace. And the sources we've looked at, they really paint this incredible picture of him, warts and all.
Exactly. And the impact of his work, too. We want to kind of unpack what makes him so enduring, right? Based on what these materials show us about his complex legacy.
And we should probably touch on those deeper reflections in his work, those mindful moments, as you call them, moments that really make you stop and think.
Good point. So the sources give us glimpses into his character, definitely his influence, different takes on his writing style.
And then, of course, scenes straight out of War and Peace. You get the society, the character's personal struggles, all against that huge historical canvas.
So our goal here is really to boil down what made Tolstoy so significant, focusing on those paradoxes in the man himself and, the lasting power of his thoughts on life, history, the human spirit.
Well, the first thing that jumps out is just how paradoxical he was. A moralist preaching celibacy.
Right.
But his diaries, they talk about a voracious sexual appetite. It's quite stark. He even had an illegitimate child.
And the peace advocate who apparently enjoyed bayonet fights and wasn't shy about dueling?
Exactly. His diary entries really lay it bare.
Yeah.
He's frustrated, saying sensuality robbed him of peace, feeling like the ideal he aimed for was just unreachable.
That struggle, though, that internal battle, it makes his insights feel earned, doesn't it? Not just thought up in an ivory tower.
Absolutely. He wasn't detached. Henry James had that amazing description, calling him a reflector as vast as a natural lake, a monster harnessed to his great subject all of life.
Wow, that says it all. His own messy life was his research, in a way.
Right. As one bit puts it, the world was his classroom, experience his instructor, and trial and error lots of the latter, his surest means of study. He lived it.
And that lived experience, that understanding, it resonated globally. You mentioned Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., incredible.
It really is. A Russian count influencing these huge figures of nonviolent resistance in the 20th century. What was it about his ideas?
Maybe that focus on individual conscience, the deep sense that violence is fundamentally wrong.
Could be. It seems to strike a universal chord. And his influence wasn't just philosophical, politically in Russia.
Wow. Yeah, that quote is amazing. Late 19th century, two czars in Russia, Nicholas II, Leo Tolstoy.
And Tolstoy was by far the more respected. Imagine that, the moral authority he must have had.
Even William Jennings Bryan, a major American politician, apparently wanted to reschedule meeting the actual czar to spend more time with Tolstoy.
It just shows you the kind of standing he achieved. It wasn't just intellectual respect, it was moral respect.
And it hit people personally, too, like that American diplomat Ernest Crosby. Oh, right. He reads Tolstoy's essay on life. And it just completely changes everything for him.
Quits his job, dedicates the next, 27 years to writing and lecturing about Tolstoy?
That's commitment. It really speaks to the power of Tolstoy's ideas to fundamentally shift someone's path.
So we've got this complex, hugely influential figure. What about the writing itself? What made it grab people?
The sources mention this deep connection to nature. Like, at his best, Tolstoy seems to write as if nature herself were guiding his pen.
Like tapping into something really fundamental.
And he could take something completely ordinary, obvious even, and make it profound. Fenwick Brooks said, "It is true that to make the obvious not commonplace, one has to be a Tolstoy."
I like that. It wasn't about fancy language. It was about seeing the depth in everyday stuff.
Exactly. He wasn't afraid of seeming, banal, like Captain Tushin thinking about immortality right before battle.
Yeah, most writers might shy away from that fear of being sentimental or something. But Tolstoy just puts it out there, honestly. It makes it so relatable, which, reminds me of explorations you might find on channels like Mindful Moments and our podcasts. They dig into that kind of subtle power in literature through AI audiobook analysis.
Good connection. And that same fearlessness, that honesty, it shapes how he looks at history and leadership too, right? Especially with Napoleon and Kutuzov in War and Peace.
Definitely. He really went after the grand home theory, the idea that history is all about great men.
How did he do that?
Well, the sources point to a three-part approach. He shows us Napoleon, the supposed great man. Then he shows Kutuzov, who's very different. And then he just depicts battles as these chaotic, unmanageable things. Nobody's really in control.
And his opinion of Napoleon comes through loud and clear. Calling him that genius Napoleon, you can just hear the sarcasm.
Oh, yeah, total sarcasm.
Yeah.
He saw him as the fake grand home, basically. An insignificant tool of history who lacked real human dignity.
Because for Tolstoy, dignity was tied to goodness, right? Striving for good.
Exactly. So a conqueror, someone causing so much suffering like Napoleon, couldn't have dignity in Tolstoy's view. Evil and cruelty just can't have dignity.
Interesting how the sources draw a parallel between Napoleon in 1812 and Hitler later on.
Yeah, both military masters of Europe, both trying to impose these big economic systems, the continental system, the New Order.
And Russia wouldn't fit in, which pushed them both eastward. History repeating itself, kinda.
And Tolstoy saw something else driving the Russian resistance in 1812, didn't he? This sort of spirit.
Right, the messianic spirit. This feeling that they weren't just defending Russia, but maybe all of Europe. A really powerful, if maybe questionable, idea.
It fits with that old saying, scratch a Russian and you find a martyr. And that line from Anna Scherer in the book, Russia alone must save Europe. It captures it perfectly.
And Tolstoy felt Napoleon just couldn't grasp this. With his focus on la gloire and power.
Yeah, Napoleon's whole worldview was too shallow, too non-religious, Tolstoy thought. He couldn't understand that deeper national spirit. The source even hints Hitler might have made a similar grand psychological error, misjudging other nations.
Tolstoy was also very aware of the problems within Russia itself under the Tsar, that fundamental wrongness of the autocratic system.
Right, and that dissatisfaction led him to be interested in groups like the Masons, who he saw as trying, maybe clumsily, to change things.
But he couldn't always write openly about that stuff, could he? Especially the revolutionary ideas.
No, the censor was always looming. The sources suggest that the way he handled those themes in the later parts of War and Peace, especially secret societies, was definitely shaped by censorship. He couldn't just come out and say everything he thought.
Which is a constraint even for someone like Tolstoy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into War and Peace itself. The sources give us so many snapshots. Prince Andrew, for instance, sharp, cynical about Napoleon.
Yeah, quoting Napoleon sarcastically, and then the Vicomte has that cutting reply about the Duc d'Enghien. Shows the political tensions right there.
But then you have Pierre, totally naive, admiring Napoleon's greatness of soul for taking responsibility for that same execution, which horrifies Anna Pavlovna.
Exactly. It shows the range of opinions. And you see the social maneuvering, like Anna Mikhaïlovna trying to get money for her son Boris from the dying Count Bezukov. All about inheritance and status.
Then the Rostovs' dinner party, it feels so alive. All the different guests, the conversations, Berg being so practical about love.
Boris filling Pierre in, Natasha interacting with both Boris and Pierre, and the Count just being this generous host. Even Natasha just blurting out a question to her mother feels real.
And we get Princess Mary's situation, dealing with her very demanding father, Prince Nicholas Bolkonsky.
Right. His strict principles, activity and intelligence, good. Idleness and superstition bad, and how he educates Mary so rigorously. A tough household.
Then jump to the army before Austerlitz. Young Rostov, full of idealism, loving the Tsar, believing in Russian glory. That captures the mood, doesn't it?
It really does. Though Bilibin points out the command is full of foreigners, hinting it's maybe not purely Russian glory driving things.
And then boom, Austerlitz is lost. Rostov's despair, his ideals shattered. That's the harsh reality of war crashing in.
Even the heroes aren't always comfortable. Bagration, famous general, looks awkward at that fancy dinner after the battle. It's a different world.
The personal cost is huge, too. Prince Nicholas Bolkonsky finding out Andrew is supposedly dead, his grief, his anger, it's raw.
And the war just hangs over everyone. Back home in 1806, the Rostovs are anxious. Nicholas is eager to get back to the fight. It permeates everything.
Meanwhile, Pierre gets involved with the Masons, drawn to their ideals, courage, generosity, love of mankind, obedience. He finds joy in submitting his will.
But society still judges him harshly for the duel with Dolokhov and splitting from Helene. They mostly blame him, sympathize with her. Shows how reputations worked.
Prince Andrew is still emotionally guarded, even after his son is born. Pierre tries to free his serfs, believes they'll be happier, but runs into resistance from his own manager. Idealism meets reality.
And those philosophical talks between Andrew and Pierre. Andrew seeing someone die, talking about looking into the abyss. Really deep questions about life and death.
Then there are more practical problems. Denisov in trouble with a court-martial, Rostov trying to help him through Boris.
But Boris is just focused on his career. shows the different priorities, loyalty versus ambition.
Andrew meets Speransky, this important government figure. He's initially impressed by Speransky's odd mix of awkwardness and confidence, his refinement. They talk honor, service.
And back with the Rostovs, more social stuff.
Yeah.
The Count putting off Vera's dowry, Berg being very businesslike about it, Natasha noticing Boris has changed, become more sophisticated, name-dropping his Petersburg connections.
And Natasha's excitement for her first big ball, that's such a classic coming-of-age moment.
Then Andrew falls for Natasha, and he just comes alive again. He's talking openly to Pierre about the future, ready to go against his father's wishes.
Their declaration of love is powerful, but then Andrew insists on that 1-year delay for the marriage. Adds immediate tension.
And old Prince Bolkonsky makes it clear he disapproves, won't live with them, though Natasha seems to understand his difficult nature.
You see their connection during the engagement, though. Her delight when he laughs, but also that shared anxiety about the separation.
Tolstoy gives us these amazing contrasting scenes, too. The hunt, pure energy, impulse.
And then Uncle's balalaika playing. So soulful, Natasha's deep emotional reaction to it. The power of simple folk culture.
Nicholas starts seeing Sonia differently during the fortune-telling scene, recognizing her good qualities. More romantic complexity.
Pierre, meanwhile, hits a slump after his engagement and a mentor's death, falls back into old habits in Moscow. Personal growth isn't linear.
Old Prince Bolkonsky moves to Moscow, aging, becoming this sort of opposition figurehead. Public image versus private reality.
Princess Mary is nervous about meeting Helene, Pierre's estranged wife, and Maria Dmitrievna arrives, blunt as ever, laying out the Moscow social scene for the Rostovs.
Then things take a darker turn. Anatol Kuragin, egged on by Dolokhov, starts recklessly pursuing Natasha.
He actually plans to abduct her. It's shocking.
And just as that's happening, Prince Andrew returns. He's cold, discovers Anatol was already married, the whole thing implodes.
And then the wider world intrudes dramatically. News hits a ball, the French have crossed the Niemen River. War is here.
The emperor's reaction is immediate, resolute. No peace while Napoleon's army is on Russian soil. Boris, ever the opportunist, using the news to boost his standing.
Napoleon himself sounds arrogant, dismissive towards the Russian envoy Balashev, just talking endlessly to justify himself.
Balashev sees right through it, realizes the words mean nothing given Napoleon's actions.
Back at Bald Hills, old Prince Bolkonsky is tormenting Princess Mary, but seems aware of his own behavior, wanting Andrew's understanding. It's complex.
Natasha turns intensely religious, seeking solace, going on a pilgrimage, trying to heal.
You get these scenes of Moscow society discussing the war, all sort of opinions flying around.
Andrew writes from the front, trying to reconcile with his father, offering strategic advice, warning them to move to Moscow because the war is getting closer.
Panic starts to set in near the Bolkonsky estate. Alpatich, the steward, sees peasants getting restless, influenced by rumors and French leaflets saying they won't be harmed.
Even Larushka, Denisov's old valet, ends up with Napoleon and shamelessly tries to curry favor. Survival instinct, maybe? Princess Mary finds the peasants of Bogocharovo, manipulated by their elder drone, refuse to leave as ordered. Authorities breaking down. She reflects on her father's last days, regrets not going to him sooner.
And then Rostov arrives, sees the chaos at Bogocharovo, and reacts impulsively, angrily. Passionate, but maybe misguided duty. It's all converging.
It's just this incredible tapestry through all these lives, these contradictions within people like Tolstoy himself, and these huge historical forces. He makes us confront it all.
It really challenges how you think about heroes, leaders, what makes people tick, doesn't it? That resilience, the human spirit against it all.
Definitely. He leaves you with so much to think about.
So if this dive into Tolstoy and the vast world of War and Peace has sparked something for you, please do subscribe and maybe share it with others who enjoy this kind of exploration.
And there's a link in the show notes if you want to get hold of the full text of War and Peace and really immerse yourself.
Absolutely. And just a final thought. As you encounter all the information and stories out there today, it's always worth thinking critically about the narratives being presented, just like Tolstoy encourages us to do.